The first thing I noticed wasn't the message. It was the way Ethan smiled at his phone, like the world around him didn't exist. I was standing at the sink, toothbrush in hand foam, gathering in the corners of my mouth. The morning light filtered through the slatted blinds of our bathroom, soft and harmless, the kind of morning that used to mean coffee together and half-hearted debates about Spotify playlists, but this time I watched his eyes' narrow lips, twitching thumbs gliding across the screen with the kind of familiarity I hadn't felt in months. I didn't need to ask. I didn't need a password. He left his phone on the counter as he stepped into the shower, humming some new tune like Carefree, like a man with nothing to hide. My hands moved on their own, wiping the mirror clear before reaching for the device. I wasn't hunting. I wasn't even curious. I already knew. The preview was enough. Can't wait to see you at the lake. Just you and me this time. Her name didn't appear in the message, but the nickname he used 2 nights ago. Clearwater's Calling Again clicked into place with a brutal clarity. The same lake we used to drive to every summer. The place I once believed held our most intimate memories now served as their playground. I stared at the screen, not moving, not blinking, just watching the digital letters burn themselves into my mind like fire against parchment. The bathroom filled with steam. Ethan stepped out, towel around his waist, oblivious to the wildfire spreading behind my eyes. I turned away, dropped the phone silently back on the counter, and rinsed my mouth. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the towel. I gripped it tighter. Then I looked at him, really looked, and saw a man I didn't recognize. He kissed my cheek too fast, too guilty. "Don't wait up tonight," he said casually. "Late meeting with the East Coast team." I smiled, I nodded, and that's when something inside me snapped. Not loud, not violent, just final, like the quiet click of a door locking from the inside. In that moment, I knew this wasn't a one-time mistake. It wasn't a lapse, it was a choice, one he'd been making for weeks, maybe months. And I had been the background noise, the placeholder, the woman folding laundry, while he texted his affair partner in code. That morning, I didn't cry. I packed the kids' lunches. I left for work early. I answered emails, nodded in meetings, laughed at jokes I didn't hear. But underneath it all, something new, pulsed awareness, cold and clear. The kind that doesn't break you, the kind that prepares you. 11 years. That's how long I gave my life to Ethan, 6 of them as his wife, all of them as his anchor. I remember when we met a networking event neither of us wanted to attend. I was still new in Portland, trying to prove myself at a solar startup that barely had funding. He made a joke about the vegan hors d'oeuvres and offered me the last mini quiche, even though he clearly wanted it. We talked all night. He said he admired women who could lead without needing to shout. I thought he was the most grounded person I'd ever met. We were never flashy, no diamond-studded proposals or Instagram-perfect anniversaries. But there was a rhythm to our lives, a quiet certainty. We worked hard, built slowly. He climbed his way into the corporate sponsorship world, charming boardrooms with his polished smile. I moved from assistant to project lead, then finally to director. It wasn't easy. There were layoffs, lean years, canceled vacations. But we made it work. Or rather, I made it work. I gave up a job offer in San Francisco so he wouldn't have to uproot. I drained my savings to help him pay off his student loans. When his father had a stroke, I took a leave of absence to help with his care, while Ethan kept flying out for critical pitches. I didn't resent it then. I told myself that's what love looked like, showing up when it's inconvenient. He used to call me his North Star. I wore that title like a badge of honor. I cooked, I cleaned, I balanced spreadsheets at 2 a.m. when our home reno project nearly bankrupted us. Every time he doubted himself, I reminded him what he was capable of. When he broke down after losing a major client, I held him until his breathing steadied. Not once did I think to question who held me. Our house was filled with touches. I curated the reclaimed wood shelves he always said made it feel like a real home. The photo wall that stopped halfway up the stairs because we could never agree on the next frame. Even the cabin at Clearwater, that was my idea. I booked it the first time as a surprise anniversary gift. It became a tradition, or so I thought. People think betrayal begins with the first lie. It doesn't. It begins with sacrifice, silent, slow, and well-meaning. You give a little of yourself each day until one day you wake up and realize you've built an empire of compromise for someone who never intended to stay loyal to it. And still some part of me loved him, or maybe I just loved the version of us I worked so hard to protect. It started with little things. Not the kind you can point to and say, there, that was the moment. No, it was softer than that. Like a slow fade or light dimming gradually until you forget what brightness felt like. Ethan stopped asking about my day. I'd walk in from the office shoulders, heavy from meetings and deadlines, and he'd glance up from his phone nod, then go back to scrolling. Sometimes he'd smile, sometimes not. But his attention was never with me, and God help me, I accepted it. I told myself he was stressed. Work was overwhelming. Maybe it was just a phase. There was always a reason to look away. He started turning his phone screen down on the table. Habit, he said. Work stuff. I didn't press. He had always trusted me with everything. Passwords, bank accounts, his calendar. I told myself that kind of openness didn't just vanish, but it did. One night I woke up and found him in the living room at 2 a.m. whispering into his headset. He said it was a call with a team in Europe. Time zones suck, he laughed. I wanted to believe him. But there was something in the way he fumbled to pause. The conversation, how quickly he ended it when I walked in. My gut twisted, and I remember standing there in my pajamas, arms crossed, pretending I needed water. I got the water, I went back to bed, and I convinced myself I was being paranoid. His clothes changed too, just slightly. New cologne I didn't recognize, a shirt I hadn't bought. He'd started caring more about his gym schedule, about how he looked before work dinners. I'd tease him about it, and he'd brush it off with a grin and say, "Can't let the young guys outdress me." I laughed. I let him walk away. And then there were the weekends. Clearwater used to be ours, a place we escaped to. Together, no phones, just coffee and books and silence by the lake. But lately he was too tired or had back-to-back pitches whenever I brought it up. The last 2 times he went alone, he said he needed clarity. He even thanked me for understanding. I didn't understand. Not really, but I smiled anyway. Told myself love meant space, that when you've been together this long, things ebb and flow. Only I was the only one flowing. He had already drifted away. I look back now and wonder, did I know? Did some part of me already sense the shape of the betrayal? Maybe, but back then I wasn't ready to confront it. So I buried those whispers beneath routine school pickups, grocery runs, birthday planning. And in that silence, the truth took root. I always thought if something like this happened to me, I'd scream. Throw a vase, burn his clothes, demand answers. But when the truth finally arrived, real, undeniable, I didn't explode. I just stood still like the ground had given out, and I was waiting to hit bottom. Her name was Sabrina Holt. I saw it on a dinner reservation receipt tucked into Ethan's coat pocket. Clearwater Lodge, a $400 charge, 2 entrees, 1 room, a handwritten note. Next time we bring wine and leave guilt at home, S. My hands shook. I stared at it until the ink blurred. I remember sitting down on the hallway floor, coat draped over my lap like it was some kind of shield. The house was quiet, the kids were asleep. The only sound was my breath shallow and uneven. Sabrina Holt. I knew the name. A senior account manager at a biotech firm in Bend. I had met her once at a holiday mixer, polished, articulate. Married with a husband named Julian, an architect if memory served. She and Ethan had talked a while that night. I didn't think anything of it. I trusted him. I trusted them all. The betrayal didn't end there. I didn't know what I was doing, just that I had to know everything. I found more texts, voice notes, hotel confirmations. And then, as if fate were guiding my next step, I found Julian's professional page. The number for his architecture firm listed right at the top. I don't know what I expected from the call. Anger, denial. But when I said my name, there was a long silence on the other end. Then a sigh. "I've been wondering when this would happen," he said. Turns out I wasn't the first to suspect. Julian had seen changes too. Sabrina coming home late, lying about work trips, spending weekends in Sisters, Oregon. Clearwater Lodge, the same place where Ethan and I once carved our initials into a pine tree, like idiots who thought forever was real. Julian and I met the next weekend. We sat across from each other at a coffee shop trading fragments of a broken puzzle. Receipts, emails, screenshots. Her voice saying, "I wish he wasn't married." Ethan's voice responding, "She stopped seeing me years ago." I wanted to scream. Instead, I sipped my coffee and focused on the swirl of cream in the cup. Then Julian dropped the final blow. "She's pregnant," he said. The words didn't register at first. "With your husband's child," I asked, my voice barely audible. "No," he said, "with mine." It was like watching a bomb explode, underwater, silent but shattering. All this time they'd been lying not only to us, but to each other. Sabrina carrying Julian's child while sleeping with Ethan. Ethan telling her he'd leave me while leaving me in the dark. I went home that night and stared at our family portrait in the hallway. The kids were 5 and 7 when we took it. Ethan's hand on my shoulder, my smile wide trusting. I touched the glass and whispered, "You idiot." Not to him, to me. Grief has a rhythm. It starts with chaos, the scream, you swallow the pillow, you punch in the dark. But if you survive that, what follows is silence, stillness, then clarity. That's where I lived for weeks. I didn't speak to Ethan more than necessary. I answered his texts with one-word replies. He thought I was just busy, distant. He had no idea I was peeling back every layer of our life, documenting every hidden thread he didn't think I'd find. Julian and I agreed no explosions, no shouting, just the truth served cold. I started collecting not out of rage but purpose. I printed screenshots, downloaded voice memos. Sabrina had sent Ethan backed-up cloud data he never thought I'd access. I found financial statements from a shared account he opened without telling me. Money moved in chunks, some to Clearwater Lodge, others to a prepaid Visa card registered under his assistant's name. It wasn't about the money, it was about proof. I met with a lawyer, quietly. I walked into the office with a flash drive, a folder, and a notebook filled with dates. No drama, just data. My attorney flipped through everything, eyebrows lifting higher with every turn of the page. "This isn't just a divorce," she said. "This is leverage." Still, I waited. I didn't want to storm in during one of their rendezvous and make a scene. That's what they'd expect. That's what TV teaches us to do. But I wasn't interested in spectacle. I wanted the moment to land like a stone in still water, a ripple they'd never recover from. Julian handled the cabin booking. Same weekend, Ethan and Sabrina were planning another trip. Clearwater Lodge, same pine-shrouded property, only this time they wouldn't be alone. The night before, I sat on the floor of my closet rereading old journals. Back when I used to write about how lucky I felt to have Ethan, about our inside jokes about how he made me feel seen. I don't remember when I stopped writing. Probably around the time I stopped being someone he looked at like a partner. I closed the notebook. I didn't cry. Instead, I packed it in a bag with the divorce papers. I included a letter. Not a rage-filled manifesto, just the truth written in my own hand, signed dated. I even added the old photo of us at Clearwater. Smiling, young, deluded. That weekend I dressed with care. Not to look good for them, but for me. Black jeans, a gray sweater, boots that made no sound on hardwood. I didn't want drama. I wanted presence, finality. He had made his choices. Now I was making mine. The air at Clearwater was thinner than I remembered. Pines stood still like sentinels. The lake perfectly glassed over a mirror to everything about to break. Julian and I arrived just before sunset. We didn't speak much on the drive. There was nothing left to say. We both wore the same expression, calm, composed, as if walking into a meeting we'd been preparing for our whole lives. We waited. Their car pulled up just after 6. I watched from the upstairs window as Ethan stepped out, sunglasses perched on his head, casual in a navy half-zip. Sabrina emerged from the passenger seat, her laughter slicing the stillness. She was glowing. She touched her belly once absent-mindedly. They didn't see us until they opened the cabin door. Ethan froze first, his hand still on the knob. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Sabrina followed his gaze and stopped mid-step, confusion darkening her face. Julian stood beside me, arms crossed, unmoved. I held the folder in one hand and the divorce papers in the other. "Evening," I said. Ethan recovered first. "What the hell is this?" His voice tried for indignation but cracked around the edges. I walked slowly into the center of the room. "This," I said, placing the papers on the table between us, "is me finally getting off the merry-go-round." Sabrina stepped back, glancing between all of us. "You can't just ambush people." Julian raised his voice for the first time. "Funny, considering how well you two have mastered sneaking around." Sabrina's mouth snapped shut. I opened the folder and began laying things out, printed screenshots, emails, receipts, a timeline, a voice memo. Her voice saying, "I wish he wasn't married." His voice replying, "She's a great mom, but we're done." Ethan's hands curled into fists. "You went through my stuff." I looked him in the eye. "No, I went through our life." Sabrina collapsed into the corner chair, visibly shaken. Julian watched her with distant eyes. "You could have told me," he said quietly. "I might have forgiven you." She didn't answer. Then Ethan, desperate, now stepped toward me. "Ava, wait. This doesn't have to be. We can figure this out." I raised a hand. "There's nothing left to figure out." I slid the pen across the table. "You'll sign this. You'll let me walk away, clean. No custody battles, no more lies. And if I don't," Julian answered for me, "then we go public." The silence was thick. Sabrina looked at Ethan with a flicker of something sharp. "You told me she'd never find out." I turned toward the door, my bag already packed. I paused just once to say, "Enjoy the cabin. You've ruined it for the rest of us." And with that, I walked out. No tears, no screaming. Just a clean final closing of the door. 6 months later, I wake up to the sound of waves, not crashing, just a rhythmic hush like breath. I never realized how much silence could feel like music until I moved to this little coastal town south of Newport. The mornings here are slow. Salt air drifts through my open window. I make my coffee barefoot, humming to no one. I'm not the same woman who stood in that cabin. After the divorce was finalized, I sold our house in Portland. The kids spend weekends with Ethan now. I let them build their own understanding of him. I won't rewrite their love for their father, but I won't lie either. They're sharper than he realizes. They'll come to their own truths. I found a small rental with a view of the sea. It isn't fancy. White walls, worn floorboards. The kind of place you fill with plants and second-hand books. But it's mine. I walk to work now, a consulting role with a local solar initiative, helping young startups design greener infrastructure. It's not high profile, no glass-walled offices, but I use my brain. I meet people who give a damn, and I come home each day without dread in my chest. I started writing again. It began as late-night journaling, just unloading thoughts too heavy to carry. But then I started sharing small pieces online. A post here, a story there. Women began to write back. Strangers mostly. Some from across the country, some from down the street. I thought I was the only one they said. Or thank you for making me feel less alone. So now I write weekly letters really. To women like me. Women who gave too much, bent too far, stayed too long. I don't offer advice, I just tell the truth. Some read it and cry, others screenshot it and move on. That's okay, it's not for everyone, it's for the ones ready to begin again. I saw Ethan once since the divorce, a charity event in Portland. He looked older, tired in a way expensive suits can't hide. He tried to be charming, made some small talk about the kids, about how we should catch up. I smiled, I nodded, and I walked away. That was the catch-up. Sabrina's no longer in the picture.